So we're looking at Cargo Line Volume 5 Nuclear from Skyhook Games, the latest third-party release for TSW6. So this makes 3 third-party add-ons now since TSW6 launched, and we still haven't seen anything new from Dovetail themselves since the core roots that shipped with the game. We've had Birmingham to Crew from All Aboard Studios, the Santa Fe on Cajon Pass gameplay pack from High Iron Simulations, and now we are back in the UK yet once again for another cargo-focused release. So this pack brings a modernized Class 20/3 Loco and FNA-D nuclear flask wagons to 2 sections of the West Coast mainline. The gameplay simulates nuclear material transport between power stations and processing centers, which means you're getting priority routing and some very interesting pathing scenarios. So let's break down what you're going to be getting, how it performs, and whether it's worth picking up, at least in my own opinion. This is a breath of fresh air after the High Iron Simulations pack. That's all I'm gonna say here on that. Just spawning into Class 20, the difference in quality is immediately obvious. The exterior modeling is exceptional. The weathering details, especially on the front end, are beautifully executed. High resolution decals and text everywhere you look. Once again, Skyhook's attention to detail shows through in every aspect of this. Yes, it's unbranded and some folks won't be happy about that. Personally, I'm not too upset by it. Custom liveries will be available, and I would much rather have this new updated version of the train-in game than not have it at all because of licensing issues. Wheels and bogies look solid. There's a lot of little interactable bits on the exterior of this thing and even on the flask wagon. Lots of moving parts and pieces that animate as you interact with them. This, in my opinion, definitely meets TSW6 standards. Now, inside the cab, oh my gosh, the modeling is where this thing shines. The control stand, the dashboard with all of the buttons and knobs, the text beneath everything, the GSMR panel and the gauges, all of it is very high quality and high resolution, very well modeled. You can definitely tell that a lot of care went into enhancing this. Yes, we've had the Class 20 before in TSW, but they've made a lot of changes and variations with tons of improvements, and that is very noticeable here. This is proof that you can take something older and reshape it into something significantly better that justifies a new release. Love the texture on the seats, the floor textures. I really liked how clear the fuse box interior was as well. I could literally, with God mode, zoom all the way in without anything becoming grainy or pixelated. Some very recent DLC couldn't allow me to do that. Heck, I could stay fully zoomed out and it was pixelated. Now, the sounds when starting this thing up are very crisp, very satisfying. Like usual with UK content, I can't speak to accuracy since I'm not too familiar with UK operations, but it was pleasing to hear. It does look like the hot plate is gone from this variant, which might be accurate for nuclear transport operations, but either way, the quality here is exceptional. Now onto the rolling stock. The nuclear flask wagons themselves look incredible. Just like with the cab, when you zoom into the bogies or when you look at the handbrake wheel or examine the decals and warning labels that are just plastered all over this thing, the quality is outstanding. If you're watching this, put the video into 4K and just look at how beautiful, how sharp and crisp that is. You can tell that a lot of research was done for this as well. All the statistics and warning labels and maximum gradient notices, it's all there. You can even interact with the padlocks and check them with a little sound playing when you test the locks on the nuclear cargo. This is what I consider an extremely well done, high quality DLC. And for the price, I'm not gonna argue with it. It actually ended up being $1 cheaper than the Santa Fe on Cajon Pass pack, which doesn't entirely make sense since that included a whole new timetable. But what's funny is that it was actually even cheaper if you purchased through the Cargo Line bundle on Steam. Even if you already have the other add-ons, buying through the bundle gives an instant 10% discount. I think it came out to be around $15 free, which feels like a bargain considering the build quality here. Now the handling and suspension on this thing is pretty good too. I love how it rocks from side to side and how it leans into the joints of the track and curves of the line. This thing moves a lot, but it feels natural. It feels really good. I think Skyhook did an incredible job here with this. This thing roars and rattles when you throw it to max. It sounds so good. The brake hissing and rolling over joints, all of that sounds great too. Now, I have read online that a lot of these sounds are recycled from the original Tease Valley Line Class 20, which is a bit disappointing, but I think those sounds hold up really well here. And I definitely think they may have done some work to audio mixing, because the quality of some of these sounds, it's just not the kind of quality you would see from stock that was released years ago. Again, it aged very well, and it does feel like it meets and exceeds TSW6 standards, so I personally don't see a problem with it. I think the ambience is great too, particularly the way passing trains sound from inside the cab. The engine sounds high quality and high fidelity to me, same with the horn, so the mixing levels are all good there. So what are you actually going to be getting with this thing? Well, content-wise, you're getting journey modes on 2 separate routes. So on West Coast Mainline South, there are 2 scenarios, 4 timetable services. On West Coast Mainline Preston to Carlisle, we have 3 scenarios with 14 playable services. Keep in mind that most of those playable services are not with the Class 20, unfortunately. Now, we have multiple timetables for these same routes. So there's the original West Coast Mainline Preston to Carlisle timetable, then the Cargo Line Military timetable, now the Cargo Line Nuclear timetable. I believe they're all set in the same year, but they are 3 separate timetables now if you have all of these Cargo Line add-ons. The same applies to West Coast Mainline South with the intermodal and nuclear timetables. Now, I am not personally a fan of this approach. I definitely believe and think there should be one main timetable, then maybe one separate Cargo Line timetable that adds layers depending on which packs you own. There's also content for Riviera Line and Midland Mainline as well. So Riviera has a nuclear layer that was previously locked, now available if you own this pack plus the required DLC. That's the Rivet Games Engineering Express pack and the 86/2 pack from Just Trains, since it uses the Mark IIF coaches and the DRS Class 66. Midland Mainline has a nuclear layer providing static stock at various locations for free roam. Skyhook scenarios are consistently good, and these are no exception. I really love that acknowledge the AWS alarm that is part of the prompts with safety systems on by default. That is what I expect, and it opens up a much bigger conversation. Dovetail, please give us the ability to turn on safety systems by default in the settings. That way they're always on no matter what, as long as we have that option checked. But these scenarios are a ton of fun. There's a lot of traffic, it's incredibly busy, and what I've learned from the intro article is that nuclear transport avoids stopping at all costs because of the cargo that you're carrying. So I love the gameplay that this creates. You're maneuvering and changing tracks, going around stopped trains instead of pulling up behind them at a red signal. You're doing wrong side running and switching to slow lines to avoid stopped trains, and going back to fast lines while express trains wait for you because your cargo has priority. It's very engaging gameplay that definitely keeps you on your toes. So while the scenarios are great in my opinion, they're still A to B runs similar to what you would get in timetable mode. So if you're expecting big cinematic complex scenario work with fun interactables and things that set them apart from standard service mode runs, like the Harvest Market scenario on the Riviera Line or the movie filming scenario on the Antelope Valley Line, then you won't get that here. They are enjoyable and well designed, but they're not dramatically different from those service mode runs. So going back to the timetable situation, it's definitely frustrating because you have different third parties all contributing to the same ecosystem. Skyhook puts out a pack and adds services in a separate timetable. All Aboard Studios is releasing a new pack soon, and I'm sure that'll be another separate timetable. It would be so much better if they could add to the same collective experience, especially if they're set in the same year. I want the only differences in timetables to be the year, or maybe weekday versus weekend like we have with Manchester Manchester Airport commuter. I just don't really like having different timetables for different releases where progress doesn't always carry over. I personally just really like when things are consolidated in one place and organized, and it all adds to one big experience. There are situations where completing a service in one timetable marks it as complete in another with that medal that you earned, and I appreciate it when that happens, but when progress doesn't carry over, it definitely bothers me. Now, from what I've found, all the cargo line timetables appear to be direct mirrors of each other as each one gets updated with new releases, which I do like. Now, what we need now is for a way for them to link together, so completing a service in one marks it as complete across all of them. So there has been a lot of developer communication, a lot of insights from the team, which I do appreciate. Lucas from Skyhook has been very active on the forums addressing questions. Some key points he's clarified: the DRS Class 66 can't substitute for the Class 20 informations because the DRS and one Class 66 locomotives are set up differently from all the other 66s in TSW and aren't compatible when running in multiple. They've had issues with this before on both Intermodal and ScotRail 158 packs. The price is higher than previous cargo line volumes because this features a heavily rebuilt locomotive that's not the same as the previous Class 20. It's a Loco plus Wagon plus gameplay compared to just Wagon plus gameplay in earlier volumes. Now, regarding timetable implementation, Lucas explained that if they're allowed to add to original timetables, they will, but sometimes third parties say no because it's their timetable. For nuclear, military, and intermodal duplicating timetables, each DLC must have its own copy since one can't rely on the presence of another. Dovetail couldn't give a time frame for when they'd update the West Coast mainline timetable following TSW5 release, so after waiting several months, Skyhook decided to make their own version to avoid further disruption. Lucas also mentioned that RHTT compatibility was a stretch goal that DTG approved, but it wasn't possible to implement for release. There was also a formation designer issue where the Class 20 wasn't appearing correctly, but that's been fixed and is waiting for an update. So lots of transparency here. Even though the timetable thing does bug me, I do understand the logic behind it. And as long as all of those separate timetables layer onto each other, then I'm personally happy. I just want all my cargo line packs to work together alongside one another. I want to be able to see all the stock from all those packs on one timetable. I don't even care which. I'm that kind of person where, the more AI traffic I see, the better. Now, for issues and bugs, there were some minor bugs worth noting. The hazard lights button kept flickering. The wheel slip button seemed to always be illuminated when driving in the rain, even with no throttle applied and when clearly not wheel slipping. I'm not sure if that's supposed to maybe blink during wheel slip, but it was always lit. There are also weird illumination issues on the GSMR panel as well, especially at night. Sometimes the buttons light up and flicker oddly. The brightness buttons flash yellow and the check mark and X buttons flash blue. Very tiny visual bugs, nothing game breaking here, but definitely worth letting the developers know so they can address them. One thing I've noticed that seems to be a reoccurring problem with newer stock: there are no raindrops accumulating on the windshield. This is a huge immersion factor that's missing, and it's something that we have seen a lot with recent stock. One example of this would be on the ALP46 on the Morristown line. That has the same issue, and that wasn't solved with our most recent update, which covered Morristown fixes. I've also noticed that for the timetable menu, when I click on the Class 20 and select Cargo Line Nuclear variant, it actually gives me timetables for Cathcart Circle and West Somerset Railway, but all of these services are enthusiast tours. They should be showing under the Tees Valley Line version of the train, not the nuclear variant, but hey, if that lets me use this nicer version of the train with the better suspension physics, then I will definitely take it. But I did load into one of these services on the West Somerset Railway, and when I loaded into it, it spawned me inside of the water. So there's definitely some bug here with something, I don't know what. So there are only 4 playable services with the Class 20. I read on the forums that around 90% of the Flask services are for the Class 47 on the Preston to Carlisle route. Pretty disappointing, and I guess that sort of explains why I didn't see this Class 20 on the route at all, at least on the timetable screen. I just wish we had more to do. And again, the modeling and interiors on this Class 20 are exceptional, but but there's just not enough content. It definitely makes me second guess my recommendation, at least at full price, but it is a solid DLC with amazing quality. But again, there just isn't much to do with it. We're in that very familiar situation again. Either we have an amazing train with not much to do, or we have lots to do with poorly updated stock like the Santa Fe on Cajon Pass pack. It seems to be one extreme or the other. I think I do recommend picking this up for the build quality alone, though. The train and stock are detailed enough that it somewhat makes up for the limited gameplay. If you can get it on sale or through the bundle discount, even better. Now I want to break down my scores across all categories: visual fidelity covering model and texture quality, the exterior modeling, texture resolution, weathering details, and interior cab details are all up to TSW6 standards in my opinion. This is excellent work, or exquisite work to use a better word, 9 out of 10. Now for physics and handling, judging how the locomotive drives, including, acceleration, braking, suspension, and adhesion, everything felt pretty responsive and good. I love the way the cab rocked and how it felt going over joints. It moved very well. From a technical standpoint, not necessarily accuracy, this is up to standards, 9 out of 10 here again. Now cab quality and functionality covering, the cab modeling, gauge readability, functionality of safety systems, all the interior work, Skyhook did an amazing job here, 9 out of 10, yet once again. Now for the audio, this includes engine audio, horn, cab sounds, ambience. Now I'm reading online, yet once again, there are recycled sounds from the original Tees Valley Line Class 20, which is a bit disappointing, but in my opinion, those sounds are holding up well. The ambience is great, the mixing is great, the quality, it all sounds really good to me. I love all the knobs and clicks. There definitely has been updates because I don't remember it sounding this refined. So, putting recycling aside, the quality is there. Again, unlike the Santa Fe gameplay pack, I think it gets an 8 out of 10 here. Now, again, I enjoyed the scenarios. I'm definitely going to be pulling points back though, because it would be fun if they felt a little more different than service mode runs, though I do appreciate the interesting pathing. Dovetail has showed us that you can make complex scenarios with a lot of interesting and diverse things that you don't necessarily do in service mode, and that's not really present here, so 8 out of 10. So timetable design covering structure, variety, flow, this is where things take a big hit. There isn't much with this pack, and that's the general consensus and main gripe amongst fans. The flow and structure of what you do get are really good. They're unique runs where you take priority, and I think that's where the 5 points come from. But with what you get from that is what you lose with service runs, at least for this price, 5 out of 10. Now I'm gonna skip the stock accuracy and authenticity category because I can't speak to UK specific operational details, and going forward I will skip this category for UK content. Definitely not familiar enough with British railway operations to judge accuracy properly, so I will not be commenting on it. But if you are from the UK and have thoughts on the accuracy of this pack, please share your perspective in the comments below. Now, bugs and technical issues, there are some bugs here and there, but it's not an endless list like we saw yet once again with the Santa Fe on Cajon Pass gameplay pack. Man, I am just really ripping into that one yet once again, but it was just so bad. I can't get it out of my head, I just can't. But I'm really not too upset by what is here, so 8 out of 10. Gameplay and immersion, this pack is fun, it's enjoyable, I love riding in this loco, but again, wish there was more gameplay, 8 out of 10. And value for money, I really struggle with this one. It definitely needs more content, but the quality of the train and stock does make up for that lack of gameplay. Maybe not entirely, but at least partially, so 7 out of 10. That gives us a final score rounded to 8 out of 10. So to wrap things up, it's a very well-made pack. It showcases what Skyhook does best. So, if you value quality over quantity and appreciate Skyhook's work, I think this is worth picking up at full price, and even more worth it if you can grab that bundle discount. But if you're looking for extensive gameplay variety, you might want to wait for a sale. Definitely make your own decision based on what matters most to you in a DLC purchase. Share your experiences with the nuclear operations if you pick it up, and if you enjoyed this review, leave a like and make sure you subscribe if you haven't. As always, thanks for watching, take care guys, and happy rail simming.